Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. My name's Andy Mclaughlan. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm great. Just let me just say, I'm a great admirer of your work, both as a composer and as an improviser. You're just a huge influence, Mike.
Wow.
Basically, I'm calling from a guitar tuition company in Scotland. We're called Our Daily Shred, bit of a tongue-in-cheek name. And I just wanted to see if I could ask you a few questions just about careers and just guitar tuition, just your views.
Sure, sure, sure.
Let me begin then. Well, was a career in music something which was always a goal for you, or was it that you just realised, hey, I could make a living doing this?
No, but I started off in music. My mom used to be, just very much into music. All was in the house. There was classical music played and some jazz being played. And of course, I got more into stuff that was on the radio. A lot of soul. I was living in Washington D.C. I grew up in Washington D.C. A lot of soul music, a lot of some blues and rock, especially when. And then I picked up the guitar when I was 12, and I was more into blues and rockers. Jeff Beck, of course, Jimi Hendrix, of course, B.B. King and Buddy Guy and Albert King, and I kind of started learning that way and just by ear. And then I used to play along with the records. And then I took some of my mom's jazz records that she used to play around the house, and I said, that sounds cool. Let me try to play along with those records. And I tried, and I got lost right away. And that's when I started getting more serious and studying the guitar. But I've been playing since I was 12, and I think I got more into it when I was about 20. I got more serious, or a little bit before then, 18, 19, I started taking lessons. And then I went to music school when I was about 20, and for a little while, and then I continued to do that for 3 years at Berkeley College of Music.
Yeah, that's great. What advice can you offer for young musicians who are looking to pursue a career in music?
What advice? Um, I would say do it no matter what. No matter what. If you're interested in music, you have to go for it. I think there's no choice. And sometimes I know musicians can't make a complete living with music. Sometimes they work a little bit and they have to do other things. But I still say you got to keep the music in your heart. If you want to play, you can't give it up, because if you have that desire and you don't follow through, you're always going to feel like something's missing in your life. I've seen this happen in my lifetime where people that it didn't work out for them financially, so they did other gigs, and then they said they don't have time to play. And then they came back to music, and they said, shit, I should never have left it. And they're just playing for the fun of it. And then oftentimes, even those people get gigs. The more they play, then they start getting gigs and gigging. One guy is now doing music completely, totally all the time. He left his other gig, his other day job, and he's making money as a musician. So the chances are that if you follow through with your passion for music, the more you put into it, the more your passion will grow for music, and then that means the more you're practicing, the better you get, and the odds are you'll be able to make a living doing music, either by teaching or by playing or all of the above, all playing or teaching or whatever, some uh, uh, gigs that you don't want to do, some gigs that you do want to do, that kind of stuff. But you do all of the above, and you can make a living doing music.
Yeah, that's great. Just moving on now, just to the music itself. When you're forming a band to go out on the road or to record or whatever, what specific qualities is it that you look for in the other musicians in your band, besides being great players?
I missed the middle part. What's the?
What specific qualities do you
Oh,
look
the
for?
qualities, the certain qualities. Well, usually I like players that are open to all kinds of music and are like-minded, like-minded musicians. Because I, as I said, I started off playing blues and rock, so some of that's in my music, and I never want to let it go. And of course, I've been playing kind of more bebop lines, and one of the things that I do is I listen to a lot of horn players like Sonny Rollins and of course John Coltrane and of course Miles. Even though I played with them, I listen to them all the time and try to get some of those lines. I transcribe a lot, sometimes solos, Stan Getz, whatever, and try to get some of those lines on. And of course Michael Brecker and Bob Berg, people that I've worked with. But I transcribe their solos, especially saxophone. Sometimes piano players like McCoy Tyner or Herbie Hancock, and I try to transcribe their solos and try to get some of those ideas on the guitar, and it gives me kind of a fresh thing. But I'm into all kinds of music, so because I studied jazz very much, as I just said, with transcribing, with listening. But I'm my roots are kind of with blues and rock and some classical from my mom. So I don't really play classical guitar, but a lot of it is in me. I love that music. So I like people that have that kind of diversity in their interest. So having said that, I get different musicians, and sometimes the band usually it works, but sometimes it doesn't work as well with certain people as with others. So you have to put together a certain group. I usually work with a whole bunch of different people playing my music, like Dave Weckl knows my music, Dennis Chambers knows my music, Tom Kennedy, bass player, knows my music, Victor Wooten, bass player, knows my music, Alain Carroll knows my music. A lot of different players that I work with, but sometimes you have to pick and choose the combination for the rhythm section. Like Dave Weckl and Tom Kennedy work great together because they've been playing together since they were like 12. They grew up in St. Louis together, so they're amazing together. And Alain Carroll and this guy Lionel Cordew, that I play with a lot, great drummer. They work great together because Lionel and they just work best together, and Dennis and whoever always works great together. He's amazing. I mean, he does best, I think, with for somebody like Tom, also with Tom Kennedy or Victor Wooten. That's a great combination, Dennis and Victor. And Dave and Victor is a great combination. But some of them work better than others. But the main thing is that it's really interesting to play with all these great players. And, of course, saxophone players, Bob Franceschini, or, of course, I played with Bob Berg before he died in a car accident a few years ago, but we had a group together. Or Randy Brecker sometimes plays my stuff. And so I'm very honored to play with such great players. It's really an honor to be able to get them, and they're interested in playing with me, and I really appreciate it. But it's always different, and it's always a little bit of a challenge to put together different players. It takes a little bit of rehearsing and a couple of nights of playing before it really gels as a unit. And I think it's very important to realize that putting together just a bunch of good musicians isn't going to work no matter how great they are. It's not automatically going to work unless you have some direction for the songs, and that's up to whoever writes the songs. It's up to the band leader to kind of put it together, which I'm always learning about that. I look at music like, in all aspects of music, as just a journey that never ends. You never get. I feel like the more I know, the less I know. It's so involved. But I'm getting better at putting together bands and teaching them the music and making sure that everybody kind of gels together. And it's very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me, and it's exciting and inspiring to play with such great players. I'm doing something I'm coming to Europe with Dave and Tom, as you know, I think, coming
Yeah.
up very soon. Dave, Tom, and Bob Malik, great tenor player. And then as soon as I get home, I'm doing something at the Iridium with Terry Lynn Carrington, who knows my music also, and Esperanza Spalding, who has not played a lot of my tunes, but she was on my last record. She's the one that won the best Grammy, thing recently
Oh
for
yeah.
best new artist, and she's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that because that's going to take me in a different direction. Also, she's going to play more upright. She plays a little electric. She plays good. Whatever she plays is great. But I'm going to want her to sing more also, and hope maybe I'll accompany her or try to, with some of her songs. So it's really a challenge, and it makes, even if you play some of the similar tunes that are fun to play live, if they're even if you play the same tunes with these kind of players, it's always different.
Yeah, that's great. Um, you were mentioning being open-minded with other musicians. Do you think that being open-minded and having lots of different influences has helped you get gigs like with guys like Miles Davis and
Oh yeah. When I played with Miles, I realized how open-minded he was. He was talking about Charlie Parker sometimes in the afternoon, and then a couple hours later he would talk with equal excitement about Jimi Hendrix. The very first time he ever heard Jimi Hendrix, he said, "That is a motherfucker." I mean, he would, and it was really from the heart. It didn't have to do with like intelligence and how hard the chord changes were and all that stuff. So it didn't matter to him so much. At the end of the day, he understood a lot of that stuff. But what the most important thing was if it reached his heart, if a certain attitude that really got him, in a very emotional way, and that's what he was the most important thing to Miles. As I understood him, that was definitely the most important thing. Sometimes he would say things to the press that was not really he would just say it just to say it. But most of the time, I knew where he was at, for real, because I was hanging with him, and if it was coming from the heart, he was into it. And he was wide open to all kinds of music.
so we'll be open-minded. Just moving away now from music itself, I'd just like to ask you a few questions about actual music tuition, learning music.
Yes.
Just basically, a lot of students focus their entire practice time on technical studies. It's necessary, but do you feel that it detracts from the practice of music itself?
Well, no, I don't. It depends. It depends. If that's all they're doing, then it's going to be a problem. But I think the most important thing, and Miles did tell me this one time. He said him and Charlie Parker used to play sometimes 8 hours a day, or different musicians used to have jam sessions, and they'd play all the time. There were more places to play, but sometimes they would get together during the day and have jam sessions. So, especially if you're a guitar player, bass player, that's really easy most of the time because you just get the guy to, you get a little amp and you get a guy to come over to your house and you play together. I've always done that so that you learn some technical stuff and then you put it right away in a real setting where you're really playing with somebody, because ultimately that's what you want to do. And then if you can get a drummer in your apartment or something, that's good too, or get a rehearsal studio and play some, or you can get a drummer just to bring over brushes, so he doesn't wake anybody else up. I mean, I do that kind of stuff still all the time. I'm always playing with different people. So I think that's really, really, really important. That's to mix that with the technical stuff is really important, I think, and to really play in a practical sense, in a realistic sense, really play the music, not just learn a standard and all the scales that could go along with it, but really start playing it so that you can learn the language like you speak English. You know what I mean? You'd learn it kind of. You don't have to think about every word, and at first you have to think about every word. And if you're learning a new language, say you're learning French, and you're an English speaking person, and you're learning French, you're going to be very self-conscious at first. At least I was when I was learning music, and I'm like this with any language, which I don't know anything, but I'm still working on English myself. The thing is that it's very similar to learning a new language. You feel very self-conscious at first. You're scared you're going to mispronounce, or scared you're going to be laughed at, or whatever. And it's very self-conscious. And then after a while, you do it enough, you begin to get unconscious and fluent with the language, so that things just roll off. Then you have, and if you're really fluent, you just have an idea and you go for it. You don't have to think consciously about what words to pick. You have an idea, and the words come out right away. And that's kind of a improvising in a way. When you're asking, you don't have anything written. You have maybe an idea of what you want to say, but you don't know how the words are going to come out, what phrases you're going to use, if they're going to be long phrases, short phrases. They just pop out instantly because you know the language. That's the way you got to get with this kind of language, I think. And then, on top of that, you can take any language, but especially the language of music, you can take it as far as you possibly can, and you still won't even come close to being to learning all the stuff that there is in the language of music. But and throughout all that, I think the most important thing is to remember that music is a language, but it's a language of the heart. So you have to. The most important thing is to get the emotion across, even if you're not. If so, sometimes you have to remember that, and then they'll balance whatever technical thing you're looking for, so that you don't get lost in the technique, but you remember that this is about playing with the emotion. That's why Stevie Ray Vaughan or B.B. King is a great example. It doesn't have a lot of technique, but the emotional impact is very strong when he bends a note, and it's just where he's coming from. You know what I mean? So it's a balance of all that stuff.
Yeah. So with that in mind, would you say that playing with others is the most important thing in a young musician's development?
I think there's both. I mean, I think learning, is the right scales that go with right things, so that they're not just playing and not knowing what they're doing. They have to try to learn the language a little bit, but at the same time try to play with others. That's very important. And also ear, of course, music is about listening. So listen to the music without analyzing it sometimes. Just listen from the heart to somebody else's music, like a Sonny Rollins record, and then try to maybe transcribe it and try to grab some of it and see if you can make it your own. Transcribe a few licks or a whole solo of Sonny Rollins on St. Thomas, off of Saxophone Colossus, which is a great record, or a Wes Montgomery record called Smoking at the Half Note. To transcribe maybe a blues, as much as you can. When he starts playing chords, maybe you won't be able to hear the chords, all the voicings, but you could grab write down the top note and the rhythms. And so transcribing really helps in terms of learning the music. But you have to take the practice, the individual practice that you do, if you're learning new scales or arpeggios or all that, and then play with musicians, or if you're transcribing or whatever, so that you practice a little during the day, and then maybe in the afternoon you get together and try to play with somebody. So you really balance it out so it gets real. Sometimes at first you can't play with anybody. You have to maybe get another guitar player who's on your same level, maybe a little bit better, and try to do as best you can with it, But eventually, as soon as you can, I'd say try to play with people.
Yeah. Just to round the interview off, I just want to ask a couple of questions now, just about your current and future plans.
Well, I'm coming to Europe doing this tour, right?
Yeah.
Coming up, and then I've got another. I'm just doing a lot of touring with my own band, you know. And I did the last record I did was called Big Neighborhood, and it's got a whole bunch of different people on it. Steve Vai, Eric Johnson, and Richard Bona, and Esperanza Spalding, and Terry Lynn Carrington, and Dave Weckl. It's a bunch of people. It was an interesting record to make, and it was fun. But so I'm touring in Europe, and I'm also touring in the summer with Tom Kennedy and Dave Weckl, and Didier Lockwood, who's a violin player, a great violin player from France, a motherfucker. And so we're touring in the summer together. And then I'm doing some stuff in Japan with Richard Bona and Dennis Chambers and Randy Brecker at the Blue Note. And I just was there with Lee Ritenour. Actually, he did a record with a bunch of different guitar players, and he asked different guys who are on the record to do different projects with him live. So I went to Japan with him, and we actually did a little filming there. There was a film company called Mount Fuji Films or something like that that wanted to do a thing for TV, so we did that. He might release that as a DVD if it comes out good enough. We don't know yet, but it was interesting because Lee Ritenour is not my. He's from the West Coast. I'm from the East Coast, you know, of the states, and it's kind of a slightly different thing. But it was fun. It hooked up good. Simon Phillips was playing drums, and his bass player. What's his name? Melvin Lee Davis was playing bass. He's a bad cat from the West Coast, and then John Beasley was playing piano. So it was an interesting project, but you know, so I do different things with different people, but mainly my own band. And I'm going to do a recording as soon as I have time, but I haven't had any time. I've got about 15 tunes written and ready to go. They're all, you know, the arrangements are ready, the solo sections, all that stuff. And with a little rehearsing, I could do them. And I want to try to do it with different people, the same way I did the last record, with different people that I know that I've played with over the years, or maybe a couple of people that I haven't played with. I'm thinking about Marcus Miller, who I played with, to do some of the bass stuff on this. Victor Wooten, who I've also played with. Maybe Stanley Clark also, since I'm out in the West Coast. We've never played together. Well, maybe we played once a long time ago. And Weckl, and, you know, so I would do some of that out on the West Coast and some on the East Coast. Most of it, of course, is New York. So that's where I live, in New York City. So I'm very informed by the vibe of New York. You know, it's just part of me. And so I've lived here for 30 years. So I've always been on the East Coast. I'm actually thinking about calling the record East Coast Songs, or Songs from the East Coast.
All right.
Or Songs from the East Side. That's what I'm going to call it. Songs from the East Side, because I live on the East Side in New York City, too.
So you've got a name?
Huh?
You have a name now?
Maybe. I'm thinking of calling it Songs from the East Side, but I don't know yet, so don't even... I'm not sure. What do you think of that name?
I like it.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
Songs from the East Side. It sounds New Yorky.
Yep. Well,
And that's where I'm coming from. It's kind of if the, you know, there's some. I mean, basically, I think if there's something to wait for me to describe my own music, it's kind of got a lot of different influences. But there's always the blues is in there somewhere. You know, so wherever the blues comes from, I guess that's where it's all over the planet. You know, it's definitely in my music because it's just something that's part of me. I love that kind of feeling. It's kind of on the ground, you know. But anyway, I want to do this new record. I guess I'll get Richard Bona on it too, and he'll sing some, and hopefully Esperanza. So we'll see what happens when I do it. But I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to do it, except for next December, I think, is when I have time.
Okay.
I've been really lucky to be working my ass off, and I consider myself incredibly lucky, really lucky, and also to be so fortunate to have played with all these musicians that I've gotten a chance to play with over the years.
Yeah. Do you find that touring and recording is still as rewarding as when you were younger, when you were starting out?
Excuse me, I missed that.
Recording and touring, Do you find it as rewarding as you did when you were younger?
Oh, it's rewarding in because the music's rewarding. The travel's a pain in the ass. That's the only problem. That's really hard, and it's hard to keep your. I miss Lainey. Sometimes she comes and visits me. My wife of 30 years. Sometimes she comes, but she's on the road too. Sometimes, so we, but it's working because we've been married for 30 years, so that's great. But it's difficult, and the thing is, just the actual travel is just a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work. It's really. I sometimes say that I don't really get paid for the music. The music is the fun part. I get paid to travel. That's kind of the way I look at it. I'll play. I don't want to say this to have a promoter get it the wrong way, but I would sometimes I play for free at home. You know what I mean? I love to play all the time. I'm always working on music, but when I have to travel, it's hard. And of course, I mean, I need to make a living, so of course wherever I play, I gotta make some bread, like all of us. But the travel is what I'm trying to basically say is the travel is an ass kicker. That's for sure. But it's worth it. I still get really inspired by playing with these great players, and I consider myself very lucky to be able to take my own band and play my own music all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I'll leave you there, Mike. But thank you very much for your time. And I'll be at the gig in Manchester next month, so I will see you there.
Beautiful, man. Thank you very much. All right, I'll meet you there. Okay, man. Take
Okay,
care.
thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.